and we'll
Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, guys, Coach Steve. Welcome back. We are into the heart of almost week 10 of fantasy football. Week 9 is just about over, and we need to start getting ready for week 10 because you know what? We are more than halfway through the season, and it is time to start getting into the nitty-gritty, and it's time to focus up because you're either smooth sailing, you're trying to figure it out, or you're a desperate piece of shit right now. So we're going to really try to get you guys going here for the next month and a half because this is where fantasy is coming down to the wire for the regular season eventually here. So, of course, we have Coach John in the building. Coach John, what's going on, man?
Not much, Coach. Excited to be here. Another beautiful Monday after watching some really good football and some really bad football. So we have some waiver wires to talk about. Should be a fun day. I'm excited.
Love it. Love it. Yes, we will. We will have a lot to talk about. We're going to get through some news. We have some interesting questions that we need to break down and answer, and then we'll get through the waivers. Again, waiver wire this week, not that great. So that's why we're going to kind of focus not as much on the waiver wires and a little bit more on the rest of everything else. Like I said, this week's a really shitty bye week. The Chiefs, the Chargers, the Dolphins, the Eagles. That's a lot of great fantasy players. Unfortunately, there's no one to pick up. That's how bad this waiver wire week is. So we're going to try to do the best we can and get you guys the best players to fill in for the week, and we'll talk about some other things. So let's get started. And we're talking with some news here, and a couple injuries on the top here. Josh Downs knee injury for the Indianapolis Colts. It seems like he's going to be okay, but he definitely left that game for the majority of it. Joshua Palmer, this was prior to week 10. Week 9, he is on the IR with a knee injury, so he is going to miss the next 4 games. Cam Akers, torn Achilles, again, out for the season. The Vikings got killed today. Jaron Hall, their supposedly week 9 starter, concussion. J.K. Osborne, concussion. As we know, Hall is probably pretty much done at this point as the starter. Osborne, we'll see if he plays in week 10. The Giants, another devastating injury to them. Daniel Jones, torn ACL, out for the season. They already don't have Tyrod Taylor, who's also on IR, so definitely a major thing here. Dallas Goedert, forearm fracture, probably going to hit the IR for 4 weeks, more than likely. Christian Watson had a back and chest injury, but they're saying that he's okay. Kendre Miller's getting his ankle looked at today. Tyler Heineke and Joshua Dobbs are both starters into week 10, and then some more minor. DJ Dallas, Cordell Patterson, Matt Collins, John Mechie all got hurt on Sunday. So let's go back here, John. Cam Akers out for the season. Does this put back Alexander Madison into the good graces of fantasy football? Because he's been, okay, good. He had a pretty good week 9, I'd say.
Yeah, I think this is it just makes him back to a steady volume play. I don't think that, I never am that type of player where an injury to one guy really vaults another guy through the roof. Like, okay, it's just Alexander Madison now probably goes from his, 12, 13 touches back to 18 touches. And so, I don't think overall it's a bad thing for the offense. I mean, I think that Cam Akers helped. I think that we were getting a little bit of movement. Josh Dobbs looked good. So we'll see. But yeah, for sure, he's back locked in that low end wide running back 2, just volume play at this point. You're hoping for a touchdown just about every time. But it's at this point we talked about it. Waiver wire's really thin, and so everybody's hurting for running backs. So if you have a starting running back that's going to get, 18 carries on a team, that's pretty valuable at this point in the season.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that. We got a question in the chat to start off with. We'll get in here. Brad McCoy. What up, guys? Would you guys trade Kenneth Walker and Chris Godwin for White, Amari Cooper, and Chris Olave? Absolutely.
Brings are Pollard, Gus,
But
and Madison.
I'll let John process.
Yeah, I think so. Why not, right? Like, because you're basically, Godwin and Amari Cooper to me are sort of a wash. Like, they're similar. And then you have Ken Walker for Rashad White and Chris Olave. Yeah, I would do that. I think that's great. You're getting 3 starting caliber players for 2. So, I think that's adds some depth, and hopefully Olave start. I mean, I know he had a touchdown this week, but hopefully he starts getting touchdowns going again. And, you have Watson back with Amari Cooper, so you're not dealing with PJ Walker or whoever else they were throwing out there. So this is fine. This is a solid trade.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, John. There, Brad. This is a fantastic trade. I have both Amari Cooper and Chris Olave above Chris Godwin in rankings rest of the season. So for that, you're winning already. And honestly, right now with Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet is continuing to see more and more snaps in this offense here. Now, it could be that Walker's banged up, but that is something that you have to take into consideration. And Rashad White, I kept on telling people, Rashad White's early season was terrible. He had so many bad matchups that he was just destroyed. You've seen the last 3 weeks. He was an RB1 this past week, and he's jumped up to RB11 on the season. So he's rising right now. So you're getting a guy who I think can fill into what Walker was doing. It's not like Walker was having 150 rushing yards a game. He was getting touchdowns, and that's what White's doing. He's doing the receiving work. So good trade.
Sure. Yeah.
And Albert, hello. Welcome in,
What's up, Albert?
friend. All right. Yeah. So with the Madison thing, John, I kind of agree with you, honestly. I mean, it wasn't great before, and it won't be great after, but at least we don't have to worry about anyone else taking work away. Maybe he'll get the goal line work now, which is great. Definitely a solid player that you thought was done for the year and kind of came back from the dead, which is great.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Daniel Jones, we can assume that the rest of the Giants offense is a no-go rest of the season.
Yeah, pretty much. Other than Saquon Barkley, just because they're going to give the ball to Saquon Barkley every single time. So other than Saquon Barkley, I don't really want anything to do with the Giants. And
would you rather have the volume of a really bad Giants offense of Saquon Barkley, or would you rather trade for Tony Pollard right now with Saquon?
I would
trade up.
I think honestly, I'd rather Saquon Barkley. Something doesn't look right with Tony Pollard right now. He just isn't. He doesn't have that same sort of like burst and sort of electricity that he had in previous years. And I don't know if it's whether the way the offense is using him, the way Mike McCarthy is trying to get him in space, or whether it's Tony Pollard himself. But I don't know. I mean, he really has lost a lot of shine over the past 4 or 5 weeks, and I don't see a path for it to get better. And that's kind of my biggest fear, because they're winning games and they're scoring through the air, and their defense is incredible. And so I don't know. I just worry about Tony Pollard. So I guess I will take the security of Saquon Barkley.
I respect that. I think I'd still lean Pollard. Like I said, this was a tough matchup this week for him, and I hope that there are definitely better matchups down the road. So
yeah, it's not everyone's going to be playing the Eagles, but still, right. It's like, I mean, it's been a while since he's broken out over 10 points, and so those guys. That's tough to like, and the name value is there, and you can't bench him. So you're just keep plugging him in there, and you keep getting 7.5 points, and you're like, oh, this is killing me.
No, absolutely. Dallas Goedert, we all know more than likely. I think he ends up on the IR for at least a short term.
Yeah,
it's just makes now sense. The Devonta Smith show now. Is Devonta Smith back into that must start category?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think he is.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think Devonta Smith is always going to be one of those like hot and cold must start players, similar to like a T. Higgins, similar to like a Gabe Davis, where there's going to be bad games because there is an alpha on the other side of the field, and there will be games where he only gets 2 receptions, but he is talented enough where there could be games where he gets 9-10 receptions. And so I don't know. I've always kind of, you have to take the good with the bad with those kinds of players. So this just helps, again, just raises that floor where probably you won't see those 2 reception games anymore. Now his floor is closer to like 4 or 5 receptions. And then with the upside that you still could get these like monster touchdowns like we saw. So yeah, I think if you if you were dealing with the pains of Devonta Smith for a little while, I think you're about to reap some benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah. We saw what he was able to do last year when Dallas got it left for that extended period of fantasy last year. And it was just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think you get a guy who's going to get you at least over 10 fantasy points each week now compared to, oh man, he's getting me 6 and 7 right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely going to be a guy who gets you over 10 each week, which is fantastic. So
love it.
All right. So let's go away from the fantasy news here. Oh, rest of the season. Who would you rather have, Tyler Heineke or Joshua Dobbs?
Joshua Dobbs. I think I think I would. I mean, Joshua Dobbs he's proven it now in, what is this, like his 5th team in 2 years? I mean, he's just everywhere he goes. I was texting some of my friends about it. Everywhere he goes, he just seems to be a baller. He seems to just get it done, and I appreciate that in a quarterback. And Tyler Heineke's kind of the same way. I guess I shouldn't really besmirch Tyler Heineke, but Josh Dobbs just looks like, I'm going to figure it out, whatever I need to do. If I need to rush it in, I'll rush it in. If I need to throw to the weapons I got, I think he's set up pretty well. But Tyler Heineke is as well. Tyler Heineke has all the weapons at his disposal, so he could have good games too. I just think, I don't know. I'm a big Josh Dobbs fan right now. I'm high on Dobbs.
Yeah, no, me too. I like what he's able to do, especially with his rushing floor that he offers. That's why we liked him in Arizona and before he stopped running the ball. So yeah, I'm excited to see what Dobbs can do for this Vikings team. So
yeah.
All right, let's get away from the fantasy news. And before we get into some waiver wire talk, like I said, guys, the waivers aren't that great this week. So let's ask some questions here. And let's talk about Jalen Hurts. Do we need to have a backup quarterback if you're rostering Jalen Hurts right now? We obviously saw he got banged up last week. Thankfully, they're going into a bye, but we've seen it kind of all season where Jalen Hurts has not really been 100%. Is there fear that if this team, and they're continuing to win, if they lock up their division, they lock up the conference, in which they could pretty much do, I think, probably by week 12, probably by week 14, more than likely, do you have concerns that you want to have a high-quality backup with Jalen Hurts as you're on your team right now?
I think this is the time of year where if you're 6-2, 7-2, if you're kind of looking like I'm pretty good for the playoffs, unless something crazy happens, this is where you do need to start trading for depth. Start adding these pieces that you might not need or you might not think you need. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh God, instead of going from, maybe you trade for Justin Fields right now. And so you have Jalen Hurts and then Justin Fields on your bench. And you're like, look, hopefully I never need Justin Fields, but if I do, at least I got this guy. Versus if Jalen Hurts goes out, I'm going to the waiver wire to grab, Danny DeVito or whoever the heck it's like, this is sometimes the point where you have to do that. And I think it's hard because as fantasy players, we always think, if they're not going in my lineup, they're not going to help. And when you're going for a championship, it's a different mindset. You got to think like long-term, in case of an emergency, I need to go on like a 3-week run. This is what you got to start to do. And so trading for depth, especially when you have a superstar quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who has kind of been, flirting with injury. I think that you should absolutely at this point be trading for depth and looking for a guy. I think, guys you can go after. I think, Josh Dobbs, give up nothing and you could add him for some depth and he's pretty good. I'm sure the Justin Fields manager is probably not doing well right now. So his team could be out of the playoffs. And so, he's looking to offload some pieces there. So I think that's definitely a overall philosophy and approach that you need to start having as a fantasy player if your team is looking good for the playoffs. If you're, if you're still in the mix, you're 4-5 and you got to still kind of get some wins now, then maybe not. Maybe you don't use your assets for depth pieces. You use your assets for starters. But I think if you have Jalen Hurts, you're in a good position playoff wise, it would be very wise to have some level of a backup back there. And just in case and hope you never need to use it. But if you do, he's there.
Yeah, and I like the way you put that there a little bit too, with more of like a trade approach with it. But I think that works with trying to get yourself a depth piece kind of quarterback in that sense that you can buy on cheap. Looking more towards like waiver wire, like I think the way you should kind of approach Jalen Hurts is that you're going to hope that he's healthy rest of the season, obviously, and hope that there's no issues. But, I think I would look at the playoff schedule, look at who's available on your waiver wires that, like, listen, do I really care if I'm playing? I don't know. I'm trying to think of a bad matchup this week that I can think off the top of my head. I don't have one, but like say Deshaun Watson's sitting out there and say his playoff matchup is a much better situation, but we know he's playing the Ravens this week. Do you just take the L and then say, you know what, even if Deshaun Watson doesn't do good and against a bad matchup, rest of the season, it's going to be probably a little bit better rather than saying I'm playing for this win. Now it might depend on your situation. Like kind of John said, when it comes to trades, if you need the win, you got to go for the win. But if you don't need the win, and if you have Jalen Hurts, more times than not, you're having a pretty good season. You might want to consider, instead of looking at the week ahead, and look at towards more of the future with your backup choice that you do pick up for quarterback. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. Definitely, and that's the time. And this is the time of year too where you do have to start looking at playoff matchups. Who do they have? Before you trade for somebody and win this week. And then you look at their playoff matchup and they're like, oh my God, it's like they're playing Eagles and this and Dallas crazy defense. You're like, all right, well, I need to, maybe I'm okay this week, but I need to look at guys that'll help me in the future in my playoff run. That's a great great advice.
Right. Brad's back in again. The follow-up on his question. He was offering the Kenneth Walker, Chris Godwin for Rashad White, Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
So he said instead of Olave, Marquise Brown. Would you still consider that as a trade that you would want to accept?
I would. I mean, I would obviously want it less because I like Olave more than Marquise. But I mean, you get Kyler coming back soon, and Hollywood Brown's getting 8, 9, 10 targets a week. So if all of a sudden those become Kyler Murray targets, you're not going to really go wrong with either guy.
Wide receiver one when he
was. You're not really going to go wrong with either guy, in my opinion. I think that you were killing that trade. You won that trade. This one, it's a little bit more fair. Yeah, I think that's the way I see it with Brown. I think I would take it still, but I think it's a little bit more fair. Yeah, I'm taking them both. I'm for sure taking them both. Right. But obviously, you'd rather Olave. But even my point being is, even Marquise Brown's not that big of a downgrade. Like you're still getting a great piece that could be even better with Kyler Murray coming back. I think you're on mute.
Yes, thank you, Brad, for that question. All right, so next big question here.
Yep.
Rest of the season, the Seattle passing offense is dreadful, it seems like, for fantasy this year. We saw, obviously, JSN have the bigger week, but, they were in kind of more of a blowout catch-up mode. Which of the Seattle wide receivers do you want rest of the season? If you had to pick one, who would you want rest of the season now at this point?
I'm still gonna ride with DK Metcalf. Just because I do think that his sort of talent and dominance in this offense is solidified. It gets interesting when you start talking about JSN versus Lockett. That to me is a more interesting conversation. And I would probably start to lean to the younger guy in JSN. I think he's going to start to come on. They're going to need to, expand his route tree, expand his role if they want him to develop into who they expect him to. But ultimately, I think it's been kind of a tough go with DK the past couple of weeks. He's been kind of battling injuries. He's clearly not 100%. But I still would take DK Metcalf. But then number 2 is probably JSN. I don't know if I'm really in love with, Lockett rest of season.
Yeah, I kind of on the same page with you. I'm still taking Metcalf. I still believe he's the wide receiver one on this team. It was a tough matchup this past week against the Ravens. Ravens secondary was just so good. Unfortunately, the Seattle receivers have a really tough schedule rest of the season here. They have the 49ers 2 times. They got Dallas. They have some pretty. The Rams are a pretty solid secondary. Like they have some tough matchups here, unfortunately. But if I'm leaning on one guy, I'm still leaning on Metcalf. The JSN Tyler Lockett, yeah. I mean, that's kind of getting closer for me at this point. I would assume they still want their veteran on the field because they're a team that's winning, but talent sometimes will eventually outdo veteran presence. So, all right.
I think Tyler Lockett is a free agent after this year too. So I'm gonna.
He is. I'm pretty sure he is. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So he's fighting for his own, future, even though he's already like 31. So
Yeah.
all right, over to the next one. Is Bijan Robinson a must start still? We've seen this narrative all season, guys, where it's just like you're like you have to. Oh yeah, you have to start him. You have to start him. You draft him high. You draft him high. Whatever. But we've seen constantly that he is just not seeing the workload we want on a week-to-week basis. And if it wasn't a running back we drafted in the first round, we'd be saying, oh, he's, you start him in matchup. You start him as a flex play. Do you still consider him a must start right now, John?
Nobody is a must start. I mean, there's like a handful that are, but he's probably not. But the only thing is the positional value. It's just hard to find an athletic, do-it-all running back like that is getting, 50, 60% of snaps. I understand that the ball isn't going his way as much as we want. I understand the touchdowns aren't really going his way, but I always look at it and say, that's fine if you want to bench him, but who are you putting in? I mean, like, what running back are you going to put in over Bijan that you really feel is like that much better? I mean, you'd have to get to, are you doing Rashad White over Bijan Robinson? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and that's a good question right now.
That's a great one. That's a great one.
Because White is playing 80% of the snaps right now. Well, Brian Robinson is kind of like 9 carries this past week. I think it was 9 carries. Like, come on.
Yep, I agree. So yeah, I think if you have a guy like Rashad White, right? If you're still sitting on Rashad White, you got him. That's totally fine. You get guys like, the Justice Hills of the world, the Royce Freemans of the world. Like, I'm not, Deonta Foreman. Like, I'm still not there yet where I'm like, okay, I'm dropping Bijan for these guys or sitting Bijan for these guys. But if you have a reliable, Rashad White, if you have a solid starter, even, maybe even I'm trying to think, like maybe even a Alexander Madison at this point, you get a guy who is going to get you 15 carries. They're not going to be hyper explosive, but at least it's, you're not praying for a big play. You're just getting the volume and hope there's a touchdown. And then in the case of a guy like Rashad White, he's just coming on strong right now. He's just playing hot. So you got to kind of ride that hand. Yes, ultimately I'm okay with sitting him at this point. He's a matchup dependent. You look for games where, and that's the other thing too.
When do you know?
I know that's the other thing.
That's the issue.
It's hard to be like,
it's been like
Atlanta should win this game easily. It's hard to say that. Like, there's no real sort of matchup game you can play with him. It's just, I think it's more if your other options are in bad matchups, you can always play Bijan and hope for a big play. And that's kind of the situation we're at now. It just stinks. It stinks. In my opinion, and this is a different conversation, but it's crazy the misuse of assets in that offense. If I was the owner, I would be frustrated because we used picks, very valuable picks for these players, and we're giving the ball to Jonnu Smith and Mac Hollins and all. It's like, what are we doing, dude? I gave you all the tools and you're using your old crappy tools. I gave you brand new tools. Use those ones. And they just, but whatever. It's Arthur Smith. I don't know if I don't know what it is with that guy, but it's got to be frustrating because, Kyle Pitts, number 8 overall pick. Bijan Robinson, number 3. Drake London, top 10. Like, you have all these huge offensive weapon assets, and they're getting 30%, 20% of your team's offense combined. It's like that's not good. It's really not good.
Let's fire Arthur Smith.
Get Arthur Smith
out of there.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, and we already he's a player that you're gonna have to almost start because, like, unless you have the depth. I mean, who are you really starting him over? There's probably maybe 10 running backs I can maybe say I'd want to start over Robinson, maybe. So it's like, it's tough. It is. You're just gonna have to take the good and the bad. We talk about boom or bust wide receivers and running backs right now. A lot of them are boom or bust, and you have to take the good with the bad.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what Bijan right now is doing, unfortunately.
And this is actually a great point. We talked about this quite a bit in the offseason when we were watching sort of the landscape of running backs change. when people like Josh Jacobs weren't getting contracts. They weren't. What teams are doing now is they're spreading. Look at the Baltimore Ravens. Perfect example. I mean, they have Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and Keaton Mitchell, and they're one of the better run teams in the league right now. It's like it's just these offenses are moving in a different direction. No longer is there going to be one guy, Derrick Henry, where there's one guy getting 400 touches. It just doesn't make sense anymore in today's NFL. So for fantasy, what you have to do is look for guys who are explosive in big plays and can make a lot happen with a little. And Bijan is still one of those guys who can make a lot happen with a little bit of work.
Right. A question in the chat from Josh here. In his 20-man league, trading away Christian Kirk for Javonte Williams and Higgins.
And Higgins?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. So what I see at Josh is that when Zay Jones gets back, Christian Kirk's going to get put back in that slot. And for some reason, when Christian Kirk jumps into that slot, it's not the same kind of production. And you're getting a 2-for-1 in a 20-man league. Yeah, I want the 2-for-1 with the depth that you're getting there. Javonte's a nice backup RB. You can put Higgins in the flex.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm almost playing Javonte over Aaron Jones at this point. So I think you're getting two.
Good game, man.
I think you're getting two startable. I think you're getting two startable guys. Yeah, that's totally. I'm totally cool with this trade.
Yeah, you can play your match better with Aaron Jones and Javonte now for sure if you make this trade. I like it.
Yep.
He says bench is pretty decent. Everett, Jamison, Pop Douglas. So
yeah.
Pop
boy, Pop Douglas.
Yeah. You got a question from George Play. Hey guys, I'm 8-0, soon to be 8-1. Sorry to hear that. I'm like that in a lot of situations too. My team is Tua, CMC, Kenneth Walker, Cup, Waddle, Goddard, and Olave in the flex. Should I try to get rid of Walker and Tua? Or also should I drop Quentin, JSN, or Warren for Keontae Mitchell? The last question, no.
I probably wouldn't. Maybe. No, you can't drop Quentin Johnson. But if he goes out,
he is going to have a bad week though. He is. That's the thing. It's a tough matchup with the Jets. That's the issue. You have to hold on to Quentin Johnson for at least one more week, and then not the worst possible matchup for receivers.
I know. And Jalen Warren just looked pretty good. Keaton Mitchell's. We'll talk about
points.
We can talk about him when we get to the waiver show. I was impressed with Keaton Mitchell this past week. He showed me a lot, but I still don't know if I'm dropping any of these guys for him. But he's going to be a hot name on the waiver wire, in my opinion.
I would be okay with Warren. Just because,
Warren for Keaton Mitchell, I'm okay if you want.
Because when are you really going to trust Jalen Warren every single week? Like, I was like, nah, I don't want to trust him. This isn't the best matchup. And he goes off for a really good game. It's like, when are you going to trust him unless Najee goes down? With Keaton Mitchell, you might actually want to trust him.
Right.
So.
Right. And we just said it. Speed kills for fantasy right now. And Keaton Mitchell is about as fast as they come at running back. So, I like Jalen Warren as much as the next guy. He ain't doing what Keaton Mitchell can do. So I'll tell you that right now. Right.
And would you try to trade Walker and Tua?
Yeah, I would.
I would look around. I'd look around if you see Tua's got a tough playoff schedule. We mentioned we traded about Kenneth Walker earlier. It was just like, really don't care for him. You think he might be losing his starting spot slightly.
Yeah.
So if you can, come back to us with a trade. We'll hear Monday and Thursdays. Hit us up.
If you could get if you could get Pollard and a pretty high end quarterback, would you do something like that? Like I would, for Walker and Tua. I'm into that idea.
It just depends how many people want to give up a quarterback right now. That's the thing. So, but yeah, I would absolutely look around, but don't push it. Find the right trade. But yeah, I think I would. C-Dog, got a trade in here. Do I trade Bijan Robinson and Tank Dell for Pollard and Debo? I would still say no.
I would say no as well. Just because you're I don't know. I like Debo. I said my piece about Tony Pollard. I don't want to pile on the guy. Debo, I think is very, very good football player. You think he's unbelievable. But like everybody in that San Francisco offense, if it's not his day, he could easily go out there and give you 2 points. And that's what sucks. And, Tank Dell, yes, I agree there's a floor there too, but his ceiling seems pretty high with the way CJ Stroud's looking, the way they're throwing the ball at an amazing rate. So, I don't know. I don't know if I just don't know if I'd be buying into it, which is crazy to say.
So I think the way you can see this is that I think you're getting the big upside keeping Bijan Robinson and Tank Dell. They obviously have major upside that they can probably present to you week in and week out.
Yep.
Obviously, we've seen Dell has his floor. We don't know when Bob Wood's coming back. Does that affect Tank Dell? At this point, how do you sit Tank Dell? How do you put him out of your starting lineup? And for the Texans, well, Pollard and Debo might be a better floor play. Debo, we really haven't seen Debo do well when him, Ayuk, and George Kittle all on the field. Last time he had a great game, Ayuk didn't play in that game.
Right.
So it's just like you're taking like a lot of risk by making the trade. Personally, I think you're better off holding. Again, you're making the trade because it's name value. Like, oh, we know Debo Samuel is a all-pro wide receiver. Tank Dell is just a rookie.
Yep.
So that's why that's why you like, oh, that trade sounds interesting. But like, I think in the long run, I think you're probably better off holding on Bijan and holding on that upside for Tank Dell.
For sure. Sometimes when I get trades like this, what I like to do is I will look at game logs, obviously, like without names attached to them, and just be like, okay, like what am I investing in here? Because if you look, like Debo, he's been injured. He has some down games. He'll have one blow-up game where everything looks amazing, and he's like 180 all-purpose yards, 2 touchdowns, and you're like, oh, sweet. But then there's an injury-riddled game, a game where he gets 1 target, but nothing. And it's like, so you got to take the names out of it sometimes and just look at it and go, what am I really getting? And Tony Pollard too. Yeah, you're getting a name, you're getting a starting running back for the Cowboys, but he's not getting touchdowns. He's under 4 yards a carry. Like, I don't know. Like if he wasn't Tony Pollard, you probably wouldn't. If it was Rico Dowdle doing this, you wouldn't be like, oh, I need to get Rico Dowdle on the team. You'd be like, oh, okay, it's fine.
Yeah. So, because he said he's 3-6 and he's looking to make a change. That is
why that's it. Now that's it. That I understand. Like if you want to just shake things up, I get that. I'm okay with trading Bijan and Dell. I just would maybe try and get. I think after the game Dell just had, I think you can get more, man. I think you can get more.
Yeah, I think you can. I think being 3-6, you're trying to make a trade. I think you should look to make a trade. You should look to shake things up a little bit, but look for a different trade. Try to go out there and find something else. If you want to make this trade, I always say trust your gut at the end of the day. But I would personally look around for something else. Dell had an amazing game. Like, try to sell a little bit, try to get a little bit better than that. Personally, that's how I feel. But I've never been a big Debo fan, so.
Yeah. And I'm just looking. Debo was at walkthrough practice today with no.
Yeah, he might be back, so
he could be back, but still.
Right.
I mean, he had 2 games this year, week 2, week 3, over 20 points, and then other than that, it was all 10 points or below.
Right.
So it's with a 0 and a 1 in there. So
I might trust CJ Stroud more than Brock Purdy, so that's kind of
yeah. Dude, CJ Stroud looked unbelievable.
Like Houston can't run the ball, so they're going to throw the ball a ton. San Fran can run the ball, so that's another way to look at it. So Josh is back. So he goes, do you guys value Higgins over Kirk the rest of the season?
Yeah, probably in a vacuum. Yeah, I would. I mean, Burrow finally starts to look like himself again.
He seems healthy. Yeah,
Bengals are humming. Where you're going to see Zay Jones come back. I think that. I think coming out of the bye, you got to assume they're going to try and get Calvin Ridley a little bit more involved, other than just running sprints out there. So I don't know. I think Christian Kirk's always a good player. I think Christian Kirk is a solid NFL player. Higgins is a legit wide receiver. If Higgins was on any other team other than maybe 2 or 3, I mean, he would be the alpha. He would be the undisputed number 1. And so he just happens to be with Jamar Chase, and it's like, that sucks. But you know, I just think talent-wise in a vacuum, Higgins is a better player than Kirk. And so you're on a better offense. You're a better player. You might be the number 2 target, but I don't care because, you know, you're going to be fine.
Agreed. Yes. Hey, Kyle, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Kyle?
All right. So let's move on now. Let's get into our conversation of waiver wires. Like I said, for the day here, I don't know if this is. Oh, this isn't going to work. It is not going to work because I didn't pull it up beforehand. But guys, if you have been listening to the show the last few weeks, we have partnered up with Parlay Play. They are a new sport betting site that I've partnered up with, and they give a good promo. And we used it over this weekend here. Pretty cool. You know, if you use our promo code Coach Steve, they'll match you up to $100, and they'll also give you $5 for free as well. And the app was pretty cool. It's not an app. I'm sorry. It's a website, and I always get my things confused on my phone here. But pretty cool website. I've done a lot of cool different things on there. And like I said, I used it this weekend. I made a couple dollars here and there. And like I said, if you want to help us out, you know, we don't really ask for much from a lot of people, but you know, if you do happen to want us to do a little sport betting and you need a new site to get some free money, Parlay Play and use the promo code Coach Steve, guys. All right, so let's get back into the action here. Talking waiver wires here now. All right, so let's see how we did last week. Last week, Gardner Minshew, not the greatest game. Derek Carr had a pretty solid game. Will Levis looked good, but not good for fantasy. Running backs, DeMarcado didn't play. Zach Charbonnet, like we said, he kind of saw some more work in the offense. Devin Singletary got the start. Wasn't great, but got the start. Royce Freeman, he did okay. Justice Hill did okay. Again, Leonard Fournette was more of a long-term play. He wasn't really playing yet with the team. Wide receivers, Demario Douglas had a solid 10-point game. Rashard Rashid kind of didn't have a great game. Michael Wilson was out. Khalil Shakir had a decent outing, if I'm not mistaken. Michael Gallup is losing his work right now in the Cowboys offense. Jaden Reed, not so great. We'll find out about Quentin Williams tonight, and Van Jefferson, complete meltdown failure. So the wide receivers we didn't do that great on. But tight ends, Trey McBride, again, I still like Trey McBride rest of the season with Kyler Murray back, but it was a tough matchup, and Clayton Tune looked terrible.
Horrible.
Taysom Hill is a freaking superstar and a half. And Michael Mayer, I guess, isn't ready for the prime time yet, and he's starting to lose a little work to Austin Cooper again. So let's get into the magic this week here. This is the overview of our waiver wire quarterbacks. These are all the quarterbacks. You know, the under 40%, not so great this week. But if you're looking for a quarterback with all these elite quarterbacks on bye, you got Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield, Will Levis, Geno Smith. You got a fantastic matchup. I mean, like I said about Mac Jones, likely last week they play the Commanders. He can't mess this up, right? And that's how I feel about Geno Smith. Jordan Love, Derek Carr, Deshaun Watson, all over the 40%. I probably would want any one of those as my starter for the most part this week. And then you have some dynasty guys like Tyler Heineke might be out there in dynasty still, maybe not as much now. Tony DeVito, Joshua Dobbs might have been dropped and not picked back up, thinking that he was the backup. And then I don't know if the Giants plan on going from Tommy DeVito to maybe potentially bringing in Matt Barkley to play quarterback for them. So they're two super flex waiver wire dynasty leagues if you're looking for something. There's a couple options out there this week. Not as much as last week, but there's a couple. So let's talk about the under 40% mark here. John, I'll let you talk about your two guys real quick if you want to go through them.
Sure. So the two that I had were, sorry, I'm pulling it up real quick. The two that I had were Josh Dobbs and Tyler Heineke. Josh Dobbs, I think obviously we just watched him step into a game that he wasn't prepared for. He just got traded to that team 48 hours, 72 hours prior, and balled out, looked good, and rushed one in, threw a touchdown. I mean, he in my opinion now is like, what else does he need to do to prove to people that he's a starting caliber quarterback? So I think the journeyman name gets thrown around a lot, and it scares people away from starting them thinking like, the Cinderella story is going to wear off. I don't think it is. And I certainly don't think it is anytime soon. And the Vikings need him to throw the ball and stay up in games. And they're competing, believe it or not, for a hunt in the playoffs. And I like Joshua Dobbs the rest of the season. I really, really do. I think he's got the talent around him. He'll get acclimated. He'll have, he'll obviously have Jordan Addison. He'll have TJ Hawkinson. I think that there's, Powell is fine. KJ Osborne's a speedster. And then there's always the threat that you could get Justin Jefferson back. So, why not take the chance with Joshua Dobbs here? Tyler Heineke, similar to my feelings, it's going to be the same process as my love for Desmond Ridder. And that is just that there's too much offensive talent for you to not be good. Like there's too much around you. You have Jonnu Smith apparently is a superstar. You have Kyle Pitts, who we can all agree is a very talented, pass catcher, whether you want to label him a tight end or wide receiver, whatever, extremely talented pass catcher. If they want to run the ball, they can run it with, Tyler Algier, who's a muscle hamster, and just run the ball. They can, throw to the flat with Bijan Robinson, who's an ankle breaker. They can do a lot. And so the benefit to that is the quarterback. The quarterback's going to benefit from that. So the problem is what could happen and what did happen like this past week is there's some bad turnovers, and anything good you do just gets pissed away because you have 4 turnovers. And so that's always going to be a fear with Tyler Heineke. That's just who he is. He's not exactly the safest with the ball. But I think at this point he's, he could have a Gardner Minshew-esque game where he throws for 3 touchdowns, that could happen.
Yeah, no, definitely a good breakdown of both those quarterbacks. Because I had those quarterbacks as my top 2 quarterbacks too. And again, we're only doing the top 2 guys under 40%, people that are actually available that you could pick up in most of your redraft leagues this year. I said Joshua Dobbs has that rushing floor that I do like. His matchups the rest of the season are pretty good, and I think he can fit a 1-week rental for your team. Same thing with Tyler Heineke. I think that he'll end up having some decent numbers the rest of the season as long as he continues to play. So, like I said, both these quarterbacks, they're not great, but they're not bad either. And they're definitely more trustworthy than some of the other guys that are under that 40% mark on this list here. Gardner Minshew's fine, but he's kind of up and down. Bryce Young hasn't really done much. Zach Wilson hasn't really done much. And a lot of the other backup rookie quarterbacks that are out there starting. So, like I said, not a great week for quarterback. But if that 40 to 60% range here that I've mentioned, the Russell Wilson types, I'd rather have one of those for the most part to start this week and maybe rest of the season if you're still struggling with quarterback right now.
Yep.
All right. Over to our running back overview. That 60 to 40%, guys like Antonio Gibson, Roshan Johnson, but I just forgot to add this into the news, but Khalil Herbert is going to be activated off IR. So he's coming back. So picking up Roshan Johnson, he might be more of a cut right now to me. Zeke Elliott, those are guys in that 40, 60% range. Like I said, look for Khalil Herbert, look for Kerryon Williams, look for James Conner, because James Conner is supposedly coming off the IR this week. Kerryon Williams is definitely coming off IR next week. So look for some of those guys who might have been maybe dropped in a few of your leagues. There's tough decisions to be made sometimes, especially when people are on IR. Some dynasty rosters, you're looking at the Leonard Fournettes, the Kenny McIntosh, the Ty Chandlers now, the Keaton Mitchell, even though Keaton Mitchell is a little bit more of a big mark here. And then there's a bunch of people under 40% that I'll name after me and John give our top 10 list here. So I'm going to go first on this one, John. We're going to go back and forth on the positions. So for my tops, it's Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet is seeing more and more work. He's just slightly under that 40% mark. If he's out there, he definitely needs to be picked up because I think they're going to get a lot better work out of a guy like Zach Charbonnet rest of the season here. He's proved that he can do things, and he's done it on limited touches. There's going to be matchups that'll look slightly better, and they might need his value in the passing game a little bit more than what Kenneth Walker really gives us as a passing value. He doesn't really give us anything. Keaton Mitchell, just a straight speedster. Again, that the Ravens backfield, we don't know what's going to happen with them yet, but if Mitchell can find a way to have some role on this team, we saw he only needs a couple carries to kind of break things through. A team that likely wants to rest Gus Edwards for a playoff run because he is that veteran type. They might use a guy like Mitchell a little bit more now we're getting down the stretch. Jalen McLaughlin, I always like to see what rookies do after a bye week. He's electric, but he kind of started to fall onto the wayside. I wonder if they find a way to get him a little bit more work because he has an explosive trait to him. Ty Chandler, again, I'm mostly just picking him up because he's the new backup again for the Vikings. They clearly wanted to start using someone else besides Alexander Madison, and maybe Ty Chandler gets another try at the backup role. And again, Leonard Fournette, I just want to hold on and see if what happens over the next week or so. If nothing happens after this week, I'll probably just drop him. But I want to grab him and see what happens. James Cook didn't look that great this past week against the Bengals. So, yeah, that's kind of how I felt about my top 5. Again, really, it's just the top 2. Everyone else is just like, eh. But, John, if you want to mention anything on yours, go for it.
Yeah, so I will mention Keaton Mitchell. I'll talk about him real quick because I don't think a lot of people know him or understand his background, who he is. Keaton Mitchell, small school player from East Carolina, started the season injured, was on IR, but he was a 4.37 40-yard dash guy. So your sub 4.4 as a running back, that's berserk. Like, that's so fast. And then the other stat, as I was looking it up, because it was just, interesting to me, he was second in all FBS in 2022 at 7.2 yards per carry. So that means something. Like, if you're up in the 7s for yards per carry, I mean, that's crazy. So that shows you that he has some insane big playability, and we saw it on display. What was it, 9 carries for 153 yards or something insane like that? He is, you give him a little bit of space, he's gone. And so that's important, because that is the complete opposite of what Gus Edwards is and the complete opposite of what that running back room is currently. So they need that, and they certainly want to exploit that and use that. They tried to rush him back to the lineup right once he was off IR. He wasn't quite ready. He kind of pulled his hamstring and, had to sit that week out, but looks fine. So I think going forward, he could be a big pickup and be a big play going forward. I'm a big Gus Edwards fan. I like Gus Edwards. I have him on a bunch of teams, but he doesn't do what Keaton Mitchell can do. Keaton Mitchell can do something totally different. So that's an important thing to say there, because some people just might not know. They might think like, oh, this was a flash in the pan. It's like, no, this guy was drafted and groomed to be this speedster lightning back. The other person I want to make mention was Tank Bigsby. He was on my list only because not that he looked great or deserves to be on rosters, but he's coming out of a bye, and he is the primary backup to Travis Etienne, and Travis Etienne has been a touchdown machine. So if anything was to happen to Etienne, I have a feeling Tank Bigsby would reap benefits of touchdowns. And so I'm sure he has been a very frustrating person to roster and was probably dropped through these bye weeks. And so, just worth a potential ad, worth a name to consider. If you're still sitting on some people who aren't doing you any good and you need to hang on to a running back just in case, Tank is that just in case for me.
Yeah, definitely a big blow on my part when I came to Tank Dell as a sleeper this season. Definitely hated that. Did not expect.
He looked good in the preseason. I don't know what it is about. I just don't think he's getting much work, and you're not. You're not going to look good with 2 touches. Like, it's just not.
It's all about Travis Etienne's workload. So
it's crazy. Yeah. He's looked good himself. Etienne.
Yeah. So a couple other guys on the 40% mark. Just want to name out there: Tajay Spears, Justice Hill, Elijah Mitchell, Royce Freeman. Maybe not as much Royce now. Rico Dowling, Joshua Kelly. Just mostly the backups. Your backups, basically at this point. Yep. Just to hold on to. All right, wide receiver overview. So in that 60-40% range, Tank Dell, Brandon Cooks, Romeo Doubs, Jahan Dotson. A lot of them did really good this week here, and those guys would be someone I'm still really, really want to pick up and have on my bench. Whether or not I'm starting them is a different story, but a lot of them I do want to have on my bench. From dynasty players still, guys that are more than likely probably out there, guys like Jake Bobo, Noah Brown might be out there, Jameson Crowder, if Curtis Samuel's out again, Kyle Phillips. Jalen Tobert might be out there. Kadarius Hodge has filled in for Drake London the last 2 weeks and has done something at least. Not great, but something. And if Drake London misses another week, I mean, he put up 3 for 60 yards in back-to-back games. That's something, especially in Dynasty. Jalen Guyton is coming off the IR tonight. He's playing, and without Joshua Palmer, he might have himself a role. I mean, we all hope it's Quentin Johnston, but Guyton has had history with this team. So and Isaiah McKenzie, if something really is wrong with Josh Downs or not. So, John, I'll let you run through your top 5 real quick, and then I'll quickly go through mine.
Sure. Demario Douglas, we talked about him. Patriots wide receiver, had a solid game. I think that's going to be who he is. I don't think he's ever really going to explode, but sometimes you need volume. Sometimes you just need steady accumulation of points, and you hope that the touchdowns that were kind of going, I forget his name, ACL. Anyway, going his way. Now they start to slide Demario Douglas's way. Not that the Patriots are scoring touchdowns at an alarming rate, but if there's any, hopefully they go his way. Noah Brown, we just watched. I was a huge believer in CJ Stroud preseason. This game to me cemented him as like a franchise guy. Noah Brown is reaping these benefits of Robert Woods being out because they're just throwing the ball all the time. So Noah Brown is one of those guys that I think you can pick up and play in your flex and hope for a big day. Zay Jones, we talked about coming back. Zay Jones is one of those kind of sneaky, not a sexy name to have, but always seems to do pretty well. Has a connection with Trevor Lawrence, looks to be on the outside. Khalil Shakir, we just watched again. They have another solid outing, getting work in that sort of wide receiver 3 role in this offense. But the Bills' offense is, I think, going to need to throw a lot. Their defense isn't as spectacular as we expected. And then Quentin Johnston, obviously, the runway is clear. If he doesn't take off in the next game or two, I'm getting very nervous on the future of Quentin Johnston.
I told you have to give him another week after.
That's why I said I said a week or two. I give it a week or two.
Yes.
But it is. I mean, it's everybody knows you got Josh Palmer on IR, a team that Justin Herbert's throwing the ball really well right now. Yeah, he's throwing the ball well. So the run, like I said, the runway is clear. It's just up to Quentin Johnston now if he wants to take off.
Right, exactly. So yeah, like I said, my top 5 was pretty much very similar. Demario Douglas, again, a good player that's going to see targets. Khalil Shakir, there's upside in his play. Definitely big upside. He's playing over 70% of the snaps in back-to-back weeks. Something good there. I still want to get QJ as a potential option. I picked him up in a league tonight. I was like, you know what? I have an extra roster spot. Let me just throw him on my bench. Why not? Marvin Mims, again, really kind of faded away the last month now, but I'd love to see Alpha Buy if they try to work him in. He's got a tremendous talent for this offense, and they need to kind of find a spark, and maybe Marvin Mims can do that. And again, like John said, Zay Jones, I think he's a good overall player that was a touchdown machine when he's played this season. So some couple other ones, Curtis Samuel still out there, Jaden Reed, Jameson Williams, Donovan Peoples-Jones maybe on the Lions now. They have a great matchup coming out of the bye against the Chargers. Josh Reynolds, Oda Beckham had his first touchdown in like 369 days. Cedric Tillman played the second most snaps among the Cleveland Browns wide receivers now that Donovan Peoples-Jones is gone. Jonathan Mingo played 99% of the snaps. Alec Pierce played 100% of the snaps but had 0 targets. But if Josh Downs were to miss, maybe he sees a little bit intake in terms of the target share. So there's a couple of wide receivers out there, not the best, not the worst, but there's some value out there at wide receiver for waiver wires this week. So, all right, and let's get over to the last piece, waiver wire, waiver tight end overview. That 60 to 40%. Taysom Hill better be rostered in every single league moving forward. I don't care at this point. He needs to be on rosters. He needs to be started in lineups. If you don't want to have to pick up a quarterback, put Taysom Hill in your quarterback spot for God's sake this week if you can. Logan Thomas, David Njoku's coming off back-to-back games. Those are all over the 40% mark. All probably good options I'd want to have right now in fantasy. In dynasty leagues, again, there's really not much in terms of tight ends. Tommy Trumbull. I think Daniel Bellinger was out there in a lot, but he might have been picked up now. Connor Haywood, he's coming off decent games. Durham might come off a much better game than previously. Again, there's really not a lot. Darnold Farham might be out there in dynasty leagues. So,
yeah, but you're getting Gerald Everett back, so I don't know if I want either one, Parham or Everett.
Again,
They'll just eat into each other.
Yeah, in Dynasty, it's really, really hard to find many tight ends in this league. So just like quarterbacks, they have to come out of nowhere, basically. So let me go through my top 2 tight ends, and John can go through his. My top tight end option is Jonas Smith, 100 yards. If Drake London continues to miss time, and I don't think even if he doesn't, Jonas Smith is the tight end 1 on this team. Mm-hmm. Kyle Pitts is the wide receiver 2. That's exactly how I'm seeing it moving forward. Jonas Smith's the tight end 1. He's playing the more snaps in the tight end position here. Kyle Pitts is lining out wide a lot more often now. And Jonas Smith is going to reap the benefits of playing as the actual tight end for this team here. And a more accurate quarterback, and Tyler Heineke is going to help with that. I'm picking him up right now. I'm starting him. Why not? Luke Musgrave had a really good game this week here. I still think there's a lot of upside in this game. I think that the rest of the season, he is going to have these kind of boom or bust games the rest of the year. And I like what he's doing on the field right now. And he's just an explosive tight end. And that's kind of why he's my number 2. Mm-hmm. And then, John, you have a different set of number 2s. We don't agree on tight ends this week. Not that we don't agree, but you have a different list of tight ends. So why don't you go through your 2?
Yeah, so I'm putting Cade Otton in the mix. I think he got in the end zone. I think Cade Otton is one of those guys, not a very sexy name, but the Buccaneers offense seems to be moving the ball moving the ball better. Mike Evans was a little banged up at the end of this game, so you want to monitor that situation. If he misses time, it's just going to increase Cade Otton's touchdown potential. And then Chigakonkwo, he was everybody's offseason favorite. I think with the addition of Will Levis now throwing the ball and looking good throwing the ball, Chig can become at least not a must start, but at least a viable, tight end 2 if you need somebody. If you're dealing with Dallas Goedert going down, or you're dealing with, something like that, you could grab Chig and plug him in, and I think Will Levis at least provides something. At least there's a chance there. But to be honest, out of the 4 that we have up there, I think Luke Musgrave to me is my favorite out of the gang. Hey, I like Luke a lot.
I like Luke a lot too. So more tight ends that we might have not missed that are under the 40% mark: Hunter Henry, Gerald Everett, Tyler Conklin, Juwan Johnson, Darren Farham. Again, the tight end. I think the top 4 that we mentioned, I think, are the best options to go after. Everyone else is just like, ugh. Yeah. That's rough. That is rough. So, but that's the rest of our tight ends here. I do have one more question, John. I got it in my DMs over on Twitter here. The guy, he has Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Love to see that.
Yep.
Do you trade Dalton Kincaid to get Devonta Smith right now? Straight up. When you have Sam Laporta, he's coming back. He's starting this week, so you're good on that.
You have Sam Laporta, and he's through his bye week, so you don't have to worry about that again. I'm assuming this is a redraft. Even Dynasty, I would still probably do it. But I would take Devonta Smith. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love Kincaid. I certainly love him. I love what he's shown the past couple weeks, but a big game for Kincaid is not going to be a big game for, Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith could go and have
150 and
8 for 150 and 2. Like, I don't know. As much as I love Kincaid, I don't know if that's ever really in the cards.
I felt the same way. I want to have
Kyle.
Yeah, it's so funny. Only Jonas has been doing that his entire career. Yeah.
I know.
Ralph is a big disappointment. Big disappointment. So we have a question in chat from Chill. He said, rate my trade, PPR. Give up Austin Eckler and the 102, the 201, the 202 in 2024 for Pickens, Brian Robinson, and 2 mid to late 2024 firsts.
Yes.
So he is getting the 24 firsts.
Yeah.
Are you good with that?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you rate it as?
I would rate that as, without knowing your record, without knowing everything. I mean,
you said he's rebuilding, so it's probably dynasty related.
Exactly.
So.
I'm assuming you're rebuilding right now. And so in a rebuild, I would rate this as a solid, you're getting 2 mid-late firsts. I would rate this as like a solid.
He's 2 and 6.
I mean, you're talking, I give this a 8.3, 8.4. This is a good trade. Like, if you're rebuilding, this is a good trade. This is what you're doing. You're Eckler is an expiring asset for you. He's not worth anything for you in the future. Two mid-late firsts, so you're talking,
For the 1.8, 1.9,
yeah, so
1.7.
yeah, exactly. I was gonna say 1.7, 1.8. You're in that. You're also getting Brian Robinson and George Pickens, who I think are usable for you now and do have a little bit of a future. I don't think there's a huge future with either guy, but there's at least a little bit. And then you hope with these two firsts, you take two running backs and hopefully can replace Austin Eckler with one of those picks. And then you're gravy. And then you're totally gravy. Yeah, I like this. I mean, I like this trade. This is the time to get out of Austin Eckler. This is absolutely the time. If you wait till off season or next season, there could be contract negotiations. There could be holdout talk. You don't want to do that. And especially with a guy who already is starting to show some age, you just
he said he's on the track for the 101. Love that. Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
Love that.
And you have Achane.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. See ya. Dude, see ya. I would.
And he has Gibbs and
what are you doing?
Yeah.
You don't need that
Great
at
trade.
all, dude.
Great trade.
Good trade, man.
Pickens for those 2 second-round picks is more than fair. And then getting 2 firsts for a loan for Austin Eckler is probably what people are having to pay up. Yep. You probably get him on their team, and then you get Brian Robinson and just a young running back on your team too. Not great, but
exactly.
Yeah, great trade, Joe. Great trade.
Exactly. That's it. That's a perfect, I want to put that in a vacuum and show people this is how you do a dynasty. This is how you do dynasty. This is it.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a great trade. Yeah,
definitely a great trade, Joe. We have a question from Sam. Weird week. I'm currently winning 80-76 with some decimal points in between that. I have the Chargers defense left, and he has Breece Hall. Thoughts on my chances of winning?
So the Chargers D will give you 10 points right off rip. So you're at 90-76.
Right.
So you need Breece Hall to stay under 14.
You need Breece Hall to stay not get a touchdown.
Yeah. So you need Breece Hall realistically to be around 10 points. And do I think you can win that?
I hate to be the bad news, Sam, but I'm probably 34% chance you could win that.
I was gonna say 40%. Yeah, it's probably almost a coin flip. That's probably 40% chance of you winning that.
Unless the Chargers get a lot of sacks in this game, and they could pick off.
I was just gonna say Zach Wilson could easily throw a pick early in this game, and you're like, oh, now it's not so hot, because then not only do you have the points, but now the Jets are going to have to play from behind, so they're not going to be able to run the ball.
No, they're going to run the ball still. They're going to have to.
I think you could. I think it's 64. I'm going to say you got a 40% chance of winning this. That's how I'm going to put this.
I'll say 70-30 to be more fair. Sorry, Sam, man. I want you to win. I hope you do. I hope you do. So, but yeah,
I need Austin Eckler to be under 8 points to win my matchup. If that makes you feel any better, and I give myself a 20% chance, if that. So at least you got someone. At least you got the defense to.
Defense has a good chance.
You got to help combat a little. I got nothing. I just got to sit there and hope Eckler gets the flu or something.
Yeah, no. Let's see. Oh, he said he was only giving up 1 second-round pick. I think I misread that, thinking that it was 2. So.
Even better.
Even better. He also asked, "What's the trade value for Mixon or who's?"
Don't trade Achane. Don't trade it. There is no there. In my opinion, there's no value on him right now. You can't possibly trade him. And Mixon, I mean, if you can,
I think you get maybe
a late first for him. I'm doing that.
Wait until your trade deadline gets closer. People start panicking on running backs.
Yeah, but you could get a first plus a player for Mixon is great. I am anyone who has Achane in Dynasty right now. I'm like, do not sell. You can't possibly. You don't know what his value could be enormous if he comes back off IR and has another 25-point game, 30-point game. It's like, forget it. There's no value on this guy. It's just going to be crazy. So I think a guy of that caliber in that situation, and again, it's just him because he's a sprinter level athlete.
He's still RB12 on the season.
Crazy. in 3 games. I mean, it's like nobody has that. Nobody has that situation. And in an offense that's fast as anything, knows how to use running backs in a good situation. And and next year, Mostert's gone. Jeff Wilson's gone. It's like it's totally clear for him next year too. So I think Achane right now is one of the hottest pieces to own in Dynasty. I'm not moving him for much. It would take the world to get me to move Devon Achane at this point.
Agreed. I love Devon Achane. All right. Well, we are going to wrap things up tonight, guys. John, is there anything you want to mention before we get going?
No. Austin Eckler, miss the bus. Don't go to the game. Please stay at your hotel. That would be great. Other than that, I got nothing. It was a wild week for football. We're getting to, trade deadlines and playoff pushes and all that. And this is where, the first couple of weeks, you're kind of feeling out what you got for a team. Then like weeks 4, 5, and 6, you're just trying to salvage whatever you are. And then here going forward, it's like, all right, championship or bust. So this is when it starts to get really, really fun. And, you get to look ahead to future matchups, and we're here to help you. This is the fun part of football. Fun part of fantasy too. Draft season, and then this is obviously the best.
Yes, absolutely. So again, we appreciate you all for tuning in, whether it's tonight on our YouTube channel at The Fantasy Coaches. We love all the comments, the questions guys will hear. We'd love answering them. We love helping you guys out. That's kind of why we started doing this. We love to bring all knowledge to everyone else that we can possibly do so. And also, if you're listening after on our, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, we also appreciate that too. Please leave us a 5-star review if you'd like to. We'd love that. Any great comments, we'd love to appreciate that. So, and of course, as always, guys, our sponsor, Parlay Play. If you check out their website and use the promo code Coach Steve, you can get a match up to $100 on your first deposit, and they also give you $5 for free too. So it's a deal you can't miss out on right now. And again, we'll be back on Thursday to talk start and sits for Week 10. And as always, guys, we're here every Monday and Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Please join us every time, and we appreciate it. So thank you all for listening. Tune in until next time, guys, and have a good one.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of Clark Kents. I've been feeling super